In web design terms, this is a word used to describe the last line past which someone has to scroll on a website to see more content.
Welcome to the Web Marketing Show, a podcast hosted by Randy Thornton. Learn how she approaches today's internet marketing challenges with straightforward, strategic businesses and industries of all sizes. Sit back, relax, and listen as Randy shares systems, tools, advice, trends, technologies, and how-tos about everything related to productive web marketing. Because time does matter. Let's get started. Here's Randy.
Welcome back to episode number 4. I'm Randy, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's podcast is titled On-Page SEO Checklist, the ultimate techniques and tips guide for online businesses. In summary, we're going to touch upon on-site SEO tips. You're also going to find out why sometimes I get all fired up about this topic. We're going to discuss on-page SEO opportunities, the value of utilizing on-page SEO techniques, and then, of course, we're going to dive right into the checklist. And this is a checklist that is imperative for SEO, and I am excited to go through this whole list with you. And because every day that goes by without implementing the on-site SEO techniques I'm going to discuss is a missed opportunity to generate more business. Let's get started. In a previous episode, I mentioned SEO could be broken down into 2 main categories. First, on-site SEO, and second, off-site SEO. Let's take another look again at on-site SEO and what that refers to. On-site SEO refers to search engine optimization tactics that involve any direct edits that you may make on a website or the website's files. On-site SEO techniques are done for the sole purpose of enhancing SEO. The way your website is structured can have a direct correlation on your site's Google credibility and how well it is perceived from search engines. On-site SEO techniques include anything from moving your site to a different hosting company to increase its load time, to purchasing and registering a new optimal domain name, to rewriting some code to reduce bandwidth or breakage, or even changing your website's design. These are all examples of on-site SEO and SEO tips. I know that list just sounded kind of geeky. Don't worry, I'm going to do my very, very best when we talk about and go through my on-page SEO checklist so that I describe and we talk in a language that you'll understand. You don't need to be doing web marketing every day to understand the things that we're going to talk about. Let's back up for a minute before we head into the checklist. I want to mention that the best case scenario for on-site SEO best practices really occurs when a site is first developed, meaning when it's built from the ground up and it utilizes SEO best practices and takes into account SEO functionality. This is what I refer to as an SEO-friendly website. If you hear somebody mention, this site is SEO-friendly, it means that it's got the infrastructure, the URL structure, it's categorized correctly. It is just built from the ground up in an SEO-friendly manner. Why I want to mention this is because it's so important, because if your website was not built using SEO best practices, you're going to spend much more time and have to do extra work. Probably more than likely there'll be extra cost involved to maximize your web marketing outcomes than if you had a website that was SEO friendly out of the gate. And this is a topic that I mentioned in the beginning that really gets me fired up. And the reason this gets me fired up is, unfortunately, I've worked and talked with so many business owners who have come to me for their SEO, and their website is less than SEO friendly. But when they had purchased the website, they were told that the website was indeed SEO friendly. In a lot of cases, this just wasn't true. There has even been some extreme scenarios when I've recommended to my clients, and it just made more sense to completely trash their existing site and start from scratch. I know that sounds extreme, and that is extreme. So that's not the norm, but it does occur. And also, if a website's not SEO friendly, sure, you can modify and make changes, but that takes time to go in and make those changes and modifications. Think of it this way. Let's just say you just purchased a home, and 9 months later, you learn the home has an enormous cracked foundation. You're told that your home is going to slowly crumble away each and every day, just a little bit at a time. There are only two ways to keep the home safe enough for your family to live in: constant upkeep, or tear the home down so a new foundation can be poured. Okay, perhaps this is an extreme scenario, but just pretend the situation occurred prior to home inspections, and you kind of get where I'm going here. Your website is your web marketing SEO foundation, and without a solid foundation, you're going to run into similar problems if you built a home on a foundation that was very weak and cracked. Doesn't matter how great and beautiful the home looks, it's what's underneath, and it's the foundation. It's everything that I or anybody else that isn't familiar with home inspections wouldn't know what to look for. It's those things that we don't see, but it's the way that they're put together, the material that's being used, that is going to ultimately determine quality and the longevity of the home. It's those things that I'm talking about. I guess the point I just want to make and emphasize is that your website's SEO structure and its foundation, it just plays such a substantial role in its present and future ability to keep your business growing online. Okay, let's move on. This probably would be a really good time for a little selfish plug where I talk and tell you again about WordPress Website Builder Bundle, which is located at wpwbb.com. This is a platform for businesses of all industries and sizes to have a professionally SEO-friendly website developed. I launched this website because I felt that it was important that business owners have a reliable, and they don't have to know and understand all maybe the geekiness behind what goes into making a website SEO friendly, but they want to just know that it is SEO friendly. They don't want surprises down the road. They don't want to later find out that after they've designed, the beautiful site they're really proud of, that it just isn't on a solid foundation. So if you want more information about this platform, please visit wpwbb.com. And disclosure, that is one of my websites, and that will be the sponsor for this podcast. Okay, now let's go on and let's talk about the value of on-site SEO techniques. Now that you understand what on-site SEO is, and we've gone into it a little deeper than we have in the past, think about on-page SEO as one component of on-site SEO. On-page SEO refers to tactics used when writing or producing content to make that content more discoverable for targeted keywords or keyword phrases. For example, think about the About page on your website. If you are a San Francisco plumber, your About page could use SEO techniques to enhance its ability to rank in Google for keywords such as San Francisco plumber or plumbing in San Francisco. Or if you are a national wholesale commercial furniture company, you might want to emphasize your About page for the keyword phrase commercial furniture company or wholesale commercial furniture company. On-page SEO techniques impact the ability for each and every page on your website to appear in Google and other major search engines for specifically targeted keyword phrases and terms. Notice I referenced the About page. When thinking about search engine optimization, you need to break it down to the page level. It is highly unlikely your home page is going to be able to rank for every term you'd like it to rank for. Think about Amazon. If you searched for movie rentals on Google, do you think Google is going to list Amazon's homepage in its results? No, it's going to list Amazon's movie rental website page. That movie rental website page is a doorway in to the Amazon website. What if you were a real estate company located in Dallas, Texas, and your website outperformed any other Dallas real estate website on the whole World Wide Web? Just go with me for a little bit on this one. In other words, no matter if somebody searched on Google using the keyword phrase Dallas homes or Dallas condos or luxury homes for sale in Dallas, or even typed in something more specific like a Dallas neighborhood real estate search or suburb, such as Plano, Texas real estate. No matter what keyword phrase was used, that real estate company always appeared on page 1 of Google. Now, this is a hypothetical scenario, and it's a scenario that absolutely everybody would like to be in, every business owner, anybody that's got a web presence. This scenario could only occur if your company website had pages that were individually optimized for a variety of keyword phrases. If you owned an accounting firm, it might be advantageous to rank on Google for the keyword phrase corporate tax return accountant or estate planning or IRS representation. And think about it. It would be virtually impossible for your website's homepage to contain enough content to warrant all of these different keyword phrases, and you could talk about all of these services on a homepage. In other words, think about web pages as doorway pages, entrances into your website. And each and every page on your website has a unique opportunity for you to rank for another term, therefore for you to get discovered when somebody is looking for services depending upon the keyword phrase or terms they type into that search box. And people type in all different types of search terms and phrases. So the more relevant your website is to a variety of keyword phrases and terms for products and services that your company provides, the more business you're going to get. We just learned the value of thinking about SEO on a page level versus a homepage or just a website level. Each page has an opportunity to rank for different sets of keywords, thus giving your company website more times to appear in Google. The broader your keyword reach, the more occasions you have a new chance to gain new customers and business. And now we're on to the checklist, the on-page SEO checklist. I'm going to be giving you a lot of information here, and this information is something, I'm going to present it in a checklist form. I thought that would be the easiest way for you to go back to your web pages and just take a look at them and make sure that your pages are utilizing each one of these tactics and techniques that I'm going to describe. And you can take notes, but I've also got this checklist in a nice format for you to print off or retain if you go to webmarketingshow.com/4. 4, of course, because this is the 4th episode. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you knew you had a resource to get this content in a different you had a way to get this content so that you weren't busy writing right now and you could focus on what we were talking about. Okay, let's start with content. On-page SEO technique number 1, content. Content, of course, is all the words on a website. Content can include images. Content is basically anything that resides on a web page. So think about your about page, or think about a web page on your website as we go through these different factors. There's some general guidelines that we need to talk about when we talk about content that are so important for SEO. First and foremost, the content on your page must be unique. It should absolutely not be content that you've copied and pasted from another website or pieced together from other online websites. Google may even actually penalize you if you're not using unique content. Google doesn't want to display your web page if it's got nothing new or of value to the visitors. So there is a website that is at copyscape.com that will enable you can put in a URL, or you can copy and paste the content that's on your web page and run it through this tool, and it will tell you if this content in any way, shape, or form, or the content that you place in there, is copied from any other place on the web. If you're ever in doubt and you are wondering if your content is what we call scraped or it is not unique, use this useful tool. That is not to say that you might not quote somebody or quote from another web page, but that quote perhaps is going to be 3 or 4 sentences amongst a whole page of content. That's okay. Secondly, your content must be valuable. It must be written for the visitors first and with the search engines in mind, obviously from an SEO on-page perspective. If you're contemplating a situation, always make sure that the content provides value to the visitors first before it does for Google. And this is a question I get a lot, is how long and how many words does my page need to have? And there is no absolute to this, but a page that has minimum words, it just doesn't have enough for Google to grab onto to say this page has enough information regarding a topic. The more words, the better. I always say that if you're writing a blog post or an article, minimally you want to have 500 words used, and that's not a lot of words. And if you are really going to share and provide value on a particular topic, I don't know what you could describe and really add to the online community that you could do in fewer words than 500. So longer is better, but just don't fill the page up with just words just to do your word count. Have the words actually be meaningful. The next thing that is very important for content is what's referred to in the SEO world as duplicate content. Okay, so duplicate content is when the same text, words that is found on one page can also be found on another page. There's nothing different. Several pages on your website that virtually have the same text, and there's no difference or there's no uniqueness to the pages. That's referred to as duplicate content, and that's a red check mark for on-page SEO. So as we move forward through this checklist, let's just pretend we're revising the About page on a website for a dental practice located in Atlanta, Georgia. And I actually randomly Googled dentists in Atlanta, and I found a website that I think would be helpful to reference as we go through this checklist so that you have a real life example to follow along. So if you're listening, Atlanta Dental Center, I randomly found you, and I am not picking on you by any means. Hopefully this information will actually help you, and you can go back and maybe make some tweaks to your About page, because it's not that it's all bad. It's just that I've got some suggestions. So let's use this About page at atlantadentalcenter.com/about when we go through our checklist. Now we're actually on checklist point number 2, because we've talked about content. You're going to make sure you've got enough words. You want to make sure that the content hasn't been scraped or isn't copied and pasted from another website. You want to make sure that the content on each and every page is different than the other pages. Now let's move on to on-page SEO checklist item number 2, which is keywords. With what we just discussed in mind, we can begin thinking about keywords. We know the page that we're going to be revising, and when we know the content that we're going to be writing about, it's going to be a little bit easier for us to think a little bit about what keyword phrases might be very applicable for this page. For example, it might make logical sense for our dental practice page, our dental practice About Us page, that the keyword phrase that we might target would be Atlanta Dental Practice. That makes sense. It's an About page of a dental practice. So as we look at the content that's on the existing About page on this company website, and we're thinking about rewriting the content, we're going to want to rewrite the content so the keyword phrase Atlanta Dental Practice is used throughout the content. Now, when I was looking at their page, I was trying to determine if there was a keyword phrase that they are targeting on this page, and I highly doubt it. It certainly doesn't appear that way to me. One thing that I did notice, the keyword phrase this page might be targeting would be Atlanta Dental Center, which is the name of their company. And if their company, if Atlanta Dental Center is indeed a phrase that gets searched for, which I did not look to identify that, or people, it's a popular, well-known practice, then optimizing for Atlanta Dental Center on this page makes a lot of sense as well. So ideally, this page could maybe be optimized for both Atlanta Dental Center and Atlanta Dental Practice. When we're looking at the content, we can look at the content that currently exists on the page, and if you do, you'll see why I'm saying I don't really think it's optimized for any particular keyword phrase. There's no connectivity between the two, the content and a keyword phrase. Next up, what I want to do is talk about and highlight best practices for on-page SEO keyword optimization. First, keywords need to be naturally placed within the content. We would not target the word Atlanta dental coupons on the About page, for example. In other words, your targeted keyword has to coincide and really be applicable for the content on the page. If using more than one keyword phrase per page, they should be similar in meaning. In other words, once again, are you going to talk about coupons and you're going to talk about your dental practice on the About page? That makes better sense to separate the two. So if you're going to be using more keywords than one on a page, which is sometimes fine, they should be similar in meaning. We refer to this as keyword stemming, such as teeth or tooth. One's plural, teeth and tooth. You would interchange those. That would be best practices. So if you had a page on this website that was going to be focused on teeth cleaning, you would also maybe consider using the word tooth cleaning. The number of keywords that a page should target. There is no 100% exact for this, but you must consider the keyword density. In other words, how many times is that keyword phrase that you're targeting? How many times are you using that within your content versus the overall content? And your keyword density maximum should never exceed 2%. Optimizing for secondary keywords can also be a goldmine, because when somebody else is optimizing for the most popular terms, there's less competition for pages that are optimized for the minor words. So let's go back to our dental scenario. If we are optimizing the About page for Atlanta dental practice, we might also include the phrase advanced technology Atlanta dental practice. If that was even something people search for, I don't know. But you get the idea. That's considered we talked about this last time in the last episode when we talked about keyword phrases, that's considered a long tail keyword phrase. And interjecting long tail keyword phrases in with the more desirable, more highly trafficked and searched keyword phrases is also a good idea. It's also good practice to include variations. So if you're targeting the keyword phrase on your About page, Atlanta dental practice, you wouldn't in every instance use the word exactly Atlanta dental practice. That's just not natural. If you were speaking and reading that out loud, it wouldn't probably flow like it should. So use variations. You might once in a while use the phrase Atlanta dentistry practice or dental practice in Atlanta. Mix it up. Next on our on-page SEO checklist is page titles. Page titles are perhaps the most important keyword signal that we as content producers can give to Google and others. The page title is an excellent way to communicate with the search engines about what the topic of the page is about. Think about the page title as if you were looking at a newspaper article. It would be the title of the article. The title is a sentence or a phrase that summarizes what the rest of the content is all about. When somebody reads a page title, similar to somebody reading a newspaper article, they're going to know what the rest of the content's about and what is expected in the rest of the content that they're going to be reading. Also, page titles, I think it's always good to think about being a little clever, maybe having a call to action, making the page title intriguing, making it something that sparks curiosity. In other words, make it enticing. Make it a page title just like a newspaper article. If it's boring and not as enticing, people are going to be likely to pass it by. Also note that the page title is listed on the search results page. So when you go to Google and you type in, let's say you type in dentist in Atlanta, the page title is the link to the website. it's the first thing that somebody looking on a search results page is going to see. So for instance, here's some page titles. When I did this Google search right now, dentist in Atlanta, Georgia, with reviews and ratings. Okay. Dentist, Atlanta, Georgia. And here is our dentist example that we're using. He uses Dr. Joel Benck, I'm probably saying that wrong, Atlanta Dental Center, and that gets cut off. The next one down is Best Dental, Atlanta, Georgia. Then we scroll down, we've got Fine Dentist in Atlanta, Georgia, - white pages, similar with Yelp is listed here. We've got Dentist, Midtown, Atlanta, Georgia dentist. I mean, to me, as I'm looking at these page titles, they're all trying to cram in a lot of keyword phrases, but none of these really appear to me to be separating themselves from the others. There's nothing that stands out that makes me want to click on any of these versus some of the others. So when you're writing your page title, think about it too from the perspective that that's the first thing that's going to be listed on the search results page, and it could make the difference between somebody clicking through to your website and choosing somebody else's website, somebody else that's got a better title to their page. That's why your web page title is the most important. Think about it from Google's perspective. Google was going to make the assumption that if it's your title, such as the title to a newspaper article, they're going to give more weight to the words that are put in that title because the title is used to convey the topic and what the content is about, if that makes sense. Now, some rules to follow regarding page titles. Page titles should consist of no more than 65 characters. That includes spaces. So keep the character count to 65 or under. The reason for this, if it's longer and extends past, you're going to see that ... and it's not good practice. You want to make sure that the full title that you give your web pages does display nicely on Google. You want to make sure that your keywords are used in the beginning of the title, if possible. Remember, you want to keep everything natural, but placing keywords within the title is pretty important. And putting them in the beginning versus the end of the title is also extremely beneficial. Make sure to think about a call to action as we just discussed. Make it catchy. Make it something intriguing. And of course, your title should summarize the content. And absolutely very important is that every page on your website should have its own unique page title. I want to repeat that. Every page on your website must have its own unique page title. The reason for this is when Google crawls the web and Google comes to a page on your website and it has a title, and that title is found on 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 other pages on your website, the exact same title, Google is going to assume that the content on those 50 pages is identical. It's got the same title. Wouldn't that just make sense? You've just lost the opportunity to distinguish those pages and another opportunity for a targeted keyword and discoverability from people that search online for your services and or products. So in the example, using our atlantadentalcenter.com about page, their title is this: About Atlanta Dental Center, and then a line, and then Dr. Joel Benck, and like I said, I'm probably saying that wrong, in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, so let's analyze this. First, they have used 58 characters, so that's good. If this page is optimized for the keyword phrase Atlanta Dental Center, then they've got that keyword phrase very close to the beginning of the title. If they wanted to incorporate the keyword phrase Atlanta dental practice, then switching to something that included Atlanta dental practice, closer to the front versus center would be more applicable. So depending on, what the intent here is, and like I mentioned earlier, that's really going to be based on the keyword that they chose for this particular page. They can stick with the about dental center, or they could change that to about or something that included Atlanta dental practice in it. Another tip, just because this is a local business, meaning that they service people that come to their location in a particular area, which is Atlanta, they may want to also use their phone number. Using a phone number in the title is a good idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is a signal to Google that it absolutely is a local company. Number two, once again, that page title shows up in the search results page. Can you imagine if your phone number was there and somebody didn't even have to click through to a website, but they could instantly pick up the phone and dial? That would be a good use of page titles and on-page SEO techniques. Next up, we're going to talk about meta descriptions. On our checklist, number 4 is meta descriptions. Meta descriptions are something that the website visitor does not actually see, but it's something that Google sees. When Google crawls the web and sees the coding that is used to display the web page, there is something called meta description, and it's a line in the coding. This meta description is a summary of what the content is about. It's a phrase that should be anywhere from 140 to 165 characters in length, including spaces again. And it's a summary. Think about a summary, a short little snippet of information regarding a newspaper article. Now, the meta description, even though the visitor doesn't see it, it's not shown anywhere on the website. But this is what most of the time text that is immediately under the page title. So once again, you can see how important taking the time to write unique meta descriptions for your web pages would be. This is also content that a potential visitor is going to see. It's also another opportunity to have a call to action and differentiate the content, make it intriguing so that the searcher is going to click through to your web page versus somebody else's. You want to make sure that your keywords that the page is targeting are also naturally used as part of that descriptive meta tag description. And once again, if you can push the keywords closer to the beginning of the meta description, the better, but only when it sounds natural and makes sense. So let's take a look at the meta description that's used on our dental website about page. Here's how their meta description reads. The Atlanta Dental Center is designed to make you feel welcome and comfortable from start to finish, with a combination of caring staff and state-of-the-art dental care technology. Okay, overall, not bad. Number one, this meta description uses 236 words, so we would need to tighten that up if we were optimizing this meta description and make sure that we got it to 165 characters or less. I like the fact that they've got the information that they make you feel welcome and comfortable. If I'm going to go to the dentist, I want to feel welcome and comfortable. I like the fact that they state that they use state-of-the-art technology. If I'm going to go to a dentist, I want to make sure that they've got the latest and greatest technology. So overall, I think the concept of their meta description is really, really good. I would just condense it down a little bit. Next up on the checklist, this would be number 5, is what's called the keyword tag. Now, similar to meta description, the keyword tag is back in the coding. It's something your web visitors don't see. And for a few years now, Google does not place any relevance on this tag. And the keyword tag is basically a tag that you list out the keywords that you're targeting on the page. So when the search engine spider and crawl your pages, when they crawl your pages, it's a way for you to say, oh, hey, by the way, this page is about Atlanta Dental Practice or Atlanta Dental Center. However, because it was kind of easy to, try to manipulate and gain rankings for terms by just putting keywords into this keyword tag, it was over abused, and therefore Google comes out and says they don't give any weight anymore to keyword tag. But I don't think that's true with Bing and Yahoo and some others. So I still think it's good practice to put in the keyword tag. It's not the number one priority, but if you're going through and you're optimizing anyways, why not put it there? Even though Google's going to ignore it, it's not going to harm you and might actually help you with Bing, Yahoo, and similar search engines. Now, on this About Dental page that we've been looking at, they do have a keyword tag, and their keyword tag is About Atlanta Dental Center. If their targeted keyword phrase was Atlanta Dental Center, then they've done this correct. Just take off the about. You separate your keywords with commas, and it's best practice to use all lower cases for your keywords. And they've used upper cases, so I would suggest removing the about, using lower cases for the words, and they're good to go. If they were going to incorporate more than just one keyword phrase, they would use a comma, and they would add the phrases following. On to on-page SEO technique number 6. This is number 6 on our checklist. And number 6 refers to headings. Similar to a newspaper article, headings usually have a little bit different appearance. If you think about a newspaper article and you look and see the title, titles are usually bigger fonts. They usually stand out. They might even be a slightly different color than the rest of the text. And then as you look down the page or further down the article, you're going to see different sections, and those sections are going to have headlines, and they're going to break up the content. And typically those sections are going to have different font weight, different maybe font size than the rest of the text. So you're able to quickly identify what the content is about by just scanning the page and looking at these different headings. Headings are very good practice for on-page SEO for a couple of different reasons. First, it does, as I mentioned, break up the content. Imagine a page that just had words on it, 1,000 words, and there weren't any breaks or any headlines, section headlines that were to break up the content. That would be visually just not appealing. It wouldn't be something I'd want to sit down and read. It would look cumbersome. So sections and these headings can break up the content into digestible little sections that make the page, just look better from a readable perspective. Secondly, like our page titles, like our meta descriptions, headings also are a great way to utilize keywords and make the keywords, when naturally applicable, part of the heading tags. I don't want to make this too complicated, but there are 6 different heading tags. Heading 1, Heading 2, Heading 3, Heading 4, Heading 5, and Heading 6. Something that has a Heading 1 is more prominent than something that has a Heading 6. Heading 1s should be used only once on a page. Heading 2s should usually only be used once on a page. But when you get to a Heading 3, or heading 4, it makes more sense that you would have more heading 3s and more heading 4s, if that makes sense. Usually you can tell if your website uses H1s and H2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is on your website pages by just looking at the page. Typically, they're going to have a little bit different formatting than the paragraph format. So they might have different thickness, boldness. They might even be different colors. They might have different font sizes. You should be able to pick those out. It's important too that looking from the top of the page to the bottom of the page, your H1 is used towards the beginning of the article. Then following an H1, the H2 is placed after an H1 title, and so forth and so on. You wouldn't want the first heading on your page to be an H3. That just doesn't make sense. So you want to go from H1 to H2 to H3. And you don't need to use all of them. And oftentimes, when I'm writing a post, I always include an H1, always include an H2, and then usually I've got 3 or 4 or 5 H3s and maybe a couple H4s sometimes. On our About Dental page, they've got one H1, and that content reads about the practice. So they could have said, instead of about the practice, if they were optimizing this page for Atlanta Dental Center, they could have used about Atlanta Dental Center as their H1. It's another way to confirm what the page and the target keyword phrase is. H2, they used just one, so they did that right. And their H2 headline states, serving the Atlanta metro and midtown area since 1980. That's not bad, but serving them with what? If we could use the word dental, dentist, or something in that H2, it's going to give more weight to these types of terms. They actually have 2 H3 headings. The first one reads, Top 10 Reasons to Choose the Atlanta Dental Center, and then they follow that with a bullet list. And then the last one that they use is titled Office Tour. So not bad. Especially the first one, Top 10 Reasons to Choose the Atlanta Dental Center. They're using the word Atlanta Dental Center in there. And then for the last one, they've got Office Tour. It may be a little redundant, but why not use the phrase Atlanta Dental Center Office Tour or Office Tour of the Atlanta Dental Center? That isn't keyword stuffing because it flows, it makes sense, and it's just another way to get that keyword phrase into the headings. So I hope that wasn't too complicated. If you're listening to audio, I've got the link to this About page that we're talking about, and I've got this information located at webmarketingshow.com/4. So you can take your time, go through this so that you can digest it and that it all makes sense. Okay, let's move right along. The next item on our checklist is bold or italic wording. And this is very similar to the headline tags that we just discussed. If you bold part of your text, if you italicize part of the text, really, when that's done, that's to emphasize a part of the text. And once again, if something is emphasized because it's bolded, the assumption from Google is that that is meaningful. And so sometimes you can take advantage of those types of signals when applicable. Okay, let's keep moving here. Let's keep moving along. The next on our on-page SEO optimization checklist is links. Links are just a natural way to reference content both on your site and exterior content. It's good practice to naturally reference other content. So if you've got a reference that you want to link to in your content and link out to a different website that is going to be valuable for the reader, or more content that is relevant to what you're talking about, that's great. Linking to content within your website also can make sense. So for instance, on our About page, when they list their top reasons to choose the Atlanta Dental Center. Each one of these maybe then could link, for instance, they've got gentle dentistry, or they've got cosmetic dentistry. Perhaps this cosmetic dentistry could link to a page on their website that just specifically then discusses cosmetic dentistry. So if I'm looking at their list on their About page and I want to learn more about cosmetic dentistry, while I'm right there, if that link was there, then I could immediately discover content on their website about that. And it would be easy for me as a visitor to navigate the website. And they might have that somewhere else, and I think they do under our services, but once again, then I'm having to go and hunt for it. The web is made up of links, and links are how people get from one section to another. Use links sparingly. Make sure that when you do link to some other reference, whether it be on your website or another website, that it's relevant to the content that you're linking to. When you're linking to outside sources online, who you link to is you're almost endorsing or suggesting that your visitor goes there. So word of caution, make sure that you're linking to credible material. You know, you are who you hang with online. So if your website links out to a bunch of like kind of spammy type sites or sites that aren't authoritative from an SEO perspective, that could also cause you some harm. So consider who you're linking out to. Use links sparingly, but use them when they make sense. On to checklist number 9, and that's images. Images are great to make content more visually appealing. When used appropriately, images really can enhance the content. But keep in mind, from an SEO perspective, Google doesn't see the images, because remember, Google is looking at the coding behind the page. However, Google is getting better at reading images, and Google says they can't see images. I don't know if that's true, but Google sees some coding. Google doesn't actually see the image. However, there is a way to let Google know what that image is about, and that's through the use of alt tags. Now, alt tags are a big part of on-page SEO if you do use images. And I don't know of a website that really doesn't use images. It's also another way to signal and identify keyword phrases that are targeted within a certain page. For instance, on our dental website About page, if they do have a picture here of some of their, it looks like the dentist here, and when I hover over, this is how you can tell if there's an alt tag attached. When you hover over an image and you see some text that pops up, that's alt text. So, for instance, their alt text on this image says Joel and team about the practice. At least they've got an alt text. A lot of sites ignore this very important on-page SEO technique, so kudos to them for that. However, Joel and team about the practice, that could absolutely be refined to better optimize this page and to better describe what this image is about. And I'm going to bring up video, because today video is so popular and it's such an engaging tool for our visitors, and people like to consume content via video. Adding video, similar to adding images, is just good for a user and the user experience. I encourage videos, but one thing to keep in mind is that if you've got a page with a video and no content, Google doesn't know what is on that video. So I typically recommend that a video be transcribed, or at least there's some content below the video that outlines what is contained within the video, so that Google has some information to grab onto and understand what that video is all about. There's also some tagging that can be done, but that's going to be a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to leave that alone for now. Just know that there is special video type tagging, just like we talked about alt tags for images. Now that we've covered the checklist, let's go back and let's assume that we've utilized every of these techniques in our content when rewrite of this page. Some other things that need to be done once the content is written is, of course, you want to make sure that you're using proper spelling and grammar. Go back, check, use spell check. Just make sure that things aren't misspelled and that it's well written. I can't tell you how many times I've seen misspellings, and you can lose credibility with misspellings. So this is an easy thing to do. Next, you want to make sure that the keywords that you're targeting on the page, that they're sprinkled throughout the content. In other words, they're not all in the first paragraph and then you go on a different direction for the rest of the article, or the content talks about something else. If the content and the page is about a particular topic, it just makes sense that you're going to reference that particular phrase or term throughout the content. So sprinkle it around. Keyword placement's important. Use it as close to the beginning of the content as you can and as it makes sense. In other words, the first time you reference the keyword phrase should not be in paragraph 3. If the article and the content is about a particular topic, then that topic and that phrase would naturally be used much earlier on than in paragraph 3. We've just completed our on-page SEO checklist. And once again, all this information is going to be in the show notes. But we talked about content. We talked about keywords and keyword placement and how to choose keywords for content. We talked about your page title. We talked about the meta description. We talked about the keyword tag. We talked about headings and how to use those appropriately. We talked about using bold or italic text for emphasizing keywords and within the page. We talked about links, and we talked about images and video to make the page enticing and digestible, and to make the content more engaging for your visitor. Now I want to move on to on-page SEO optimization checklist extras. These are extras that are just really valuable and important if you're going to take advantage of on-page SEO. The first thing I want to mention is, as a website owner, business owner, you must have the capability to make on-page SEO modifications and updates. In other words, we're talking about making these changes. We're talking about maybe adding new pages and building pages that are SEO friendly. We're talking about going through your existing content and looking at each page from an SEO on-page perspective and making modifications. In order to do these modifications and updates, you need to have the capability to go in and do that. So either you or somebody has to go in and make those changes. You must also have the ability to add meta tags, image alt tags, and ideally this should be done via an editor. There should be a place for you to go in and add these things to the page, even though they're not, some of these aren't things that the visitor sees, but they're equally as important from an SEO perspective. So you've got to have the ability to go in and add these tags to each and every one of your pages. I believe a website is a living, breathing thing, and writing a page today and not adding new pages as new technologies come out, for instance, reflecting back on our dental website, there probably has been trends that happen, and updating those pages or adding pages as the dental practice adds new technologies would be a great example of why you'd want to add new pages. This is one of my pet peeves. Use easy to read fonts and font sizes with spacing. Make it easy to read regardless of the length of the content. Bold and italic are another way to emphasize important words. Use them minimally. If when you bold something, bold it because it really needs to pop out. Consider your audience when writing your content. Write for them without lingo that is maybe common in your industry, but a visitor might not understand terminology that is in common reference to how you speak. Speak in a language that your audience is going to understand. Dumb it down if you have to, but make it digestible, make it something that they can comprehend. Don't make it difficult for them to understand. Unless, of course, you're writing a page for a science project and it is all technical, then that's different. But in most cases, you just want to make sure that you're not forgetting who you're writing for. In summary, on-page SEO is probably the technique you have the most control over versus off-site SEO, where sometimes you might rely on somebody else to do an action such as link to your website, or it's not as geeky as coding. On-page SEO is a technique that absolutely every business owner should be taken advantage of. Think about on-page SEO as a way to better communicate with Google. Think about it as a way to let Google understand what the content is about versus kind of going all over the place and Google has no idea what that content is about. Never abuse content writing just for SEO. Make sure it's valuable. Make sure that it makes sense. Don't be spammy and don't ever overwrite content just for the fact of writing it. We have certainly covered a lot today, and I hope your head isn't spinning too bad. But using this on-page SEO checklist is going to have a big impact on your SEO efforts. Use this on-page SEO checklist when you are rewriting any page, when you are writing new content and a new page, or use it when you're writing a blog post. The same checklist is very applicable. Next time, we're going to talk about content management systems. I know, sounds kind of dull, huh? But trust me, this is SEO goodness. You need to hear this. So I hope you're here next time. Now for the Web Marketing Show episode for Word. I said the definition was, in web design terms, a word used to describe the last line past which someone has to scroll on a website to see more content. In other words, everything that shows up when a page first loads is called this. Well, did you guess it? This phrase is above the fold. Above the fold in web design terms references what somebody sees when they land on a page. A page, you can scroll down on a page to see more content, but it's what is shown before somebody has to take an action and scroll to see more of what's below the fold. So when somebody lands on a web page, if it's visible and displayable, it's called above the fold. If it's below the fold, it's content that somebody's got to scroll down to see what's displayed down there. Why does this even matter? Think about it. The first thing that somebody sees is above the fold. The above the fold content should be your most important content. It should be the place that there's a strong call to actions. It should be the place where people can easily navigate and get to where they want to go. Don't bury your important features below the fold and make people have to dig for it. Below the fold usually has supporting information. It may have additional navigation, such as a footer. But when you also are thinking about your on-page SEO techniques, look at the page as it loads and look to see how it looks above the fold. In other words, what is a visitor going to first see without scrolling? Does it look desirable? Make sure it does. Above the fold is a word that should be considered for optimization on every page of your website, and including the homepage. Very, very important. Take a look at your homepage. What is above the fold? What is the first thing people see without scrolling? Does it make sense? That's it. I had so much fun. I hope you learned a lot. I can't wait till we do it again.
This concludes this episode of the Web Marketing Show. If you need help or have questions or comments for Randy, please visit www.webmarketingshow.com. Be sure to listen to her next podcast show so you stay current with everything related to effective web marketing. And remember to take action today, because every day that slips by without taking action is one day further away from becoming a winning day.